am grateful to be here. I've been up north with my family and back. Whirlwind week. 3 W's, whirlwind week. This is a very special month in my family because my dad has been, since he was a little boy, really into fireworks. So he actually, since I've been a little girl, has put on a big fireworks show. So I get to watch like close up and personal fireworks. So it's a fun thing. That there's interesting things about my dad that I didn't always wish for, but I so admire that he has a passion and a curiosity and makes things happen and then provides this 4th of July show for a whole bunch of people that live around this lake. So it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to have our dreams and our passions and express them. And that ultimately is what the true freedom is. That's what true freedom is. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. I love this month. I love this month because I get to go see my dad's fireworks. And there are people carrying on, working with him. So when he is not on the planet anymore, there will be people he's trained up in this. But I love this month of freedom, not so much because we live in the USA, although I probably take that for granted, and maybe some of you do too. But what I really love about this month where we celebrate freedom is that it reminds me of a spiritual truth. That is our Science of Mind and Spirit teaching. That we are unlimited, who we are by our very nature, are of the Spirit. We are the same stuff as the divine, as the infinite is made of. We didn't make this up. Ernest Holmes, who's called the founder of our teaching, he didn't make it up. He would have been the first to say that. It's that mystics and sages through eons have said, we are is the divine. And if the divine is unlimited, which that's what we base our sense of the divine on, then so are we. And we have the power within us because of who we are to create lives that we love to live. We are free to do that. And the power that has to do with is what Kiki was singing about, because of course Hollis put together the words to put it in a song, is that we have the power of thought to create our lives. Each of us, does any of you not think? Part of you go, what she said? That part. You think. And that thought is creative, and we have the power of thought to create our lives and to change our lives. So if we don't like our lives, we change our thinking and then we change our life. That's one of our little slogans of our teaching because it is truth. Many of you already know that. Many of you have heard that. Maybe all of you have heard and read that. But if you're like me, I find that you go, yeah, and then day-to-day life happens and we forget. And we fall into what I'm calling the big sleep. Is that we start listening to the media and we start listening to other people in our lives who are all ready to remind us that our lives are contingent. Our experience of life is contingent on circumstances. You can't feel happy and youthful. You're over 55 years old. You can't feel prosperous and abundance and enjoy your life because the economy's having issues. You can't be happy because you had a sad, traumatic experience in your life. You can never be happy again. The world keeps trying to limit what we can experience and tell us that what we can experience is bound by the facts of our life, by our history. And that is not spiritual truth. Facts, we talked about this last week. Facts change. Anything of form changes. That's its nature. And so if we want to base our experience, our sense of freedom on form, then one day we're going to have lots and one day we're not, because form changes. And so this month is a great month to keep ourselves waking up. Have I started falling into that lull? Therapists call it trance, that there are different trances in our culture. Am I falling into a trance of limitation that says because I don't have the whitest teeth or the thinnest thighs or a Viking stove or Maserati GT. I don't even know what the cool cars are. Well, I know what the cool cars are now. I just think they're so ugly that I can't think they're cool. All the Hummer wannabes. If you like them, that's okay. That's your freedom to express. But that the culture tells us if we don't have those things, that we can't be truly happy. So we fall into this sleep of limitation that tells us that our ability to enjoy life, our ability to be full and free and fully expressed is based on the stuff around us and the stuff in our lives. We go to sleep and forget the truth of who we are. And so July gives us the opportunity to re-wake up and to be awake, and to be awake every moment to the freedom that we have. And to remember that it is never what happens to us. It is never what happens to us that determines our life. It's the conclusions we make about it. It's what we tell ourselves about it. People tell themselves their lives stop because of some thing that happens in their life. For some people, it's simply a divorce, which, divorces are horrible. They feel bad unless you're the one saying, I need my freedom. But I've met people who say, that's it, my life stops, I can never be happy again. Then there are really much more challenging reasons. The loss of a loved one or a child can feel like our lives are stopping and we can never be happy again. Or we can lose a job that we felt really was ours and think we can never be happy again. That's a conclusion we make. And we are free to change our conclusion at any time. So that's what I want to talk about. But first, let's just in case some of you are newer to this and go, yeah, really, my thoughts create my reality. Yeah, I've heard that. But really. Okay, here's the latest in science waking up to this. There was a stress study done in Europe that said that people, and they looked at about 7,000 people, that people who believed that they were stressed and believed that stress had a negative impact on their health were 2 times more likely to have a heart attack than those who didn't. Things that make you go, Then, I love this, that the article went on to say that Paul Rosen, who is with the American Institute of Stress, he talked about, they didn't do that study right, they didn't do enough people, and they didn't do this, and they didn't do that. And so I'm thinking, I can't use that. Then he goes on to say, though, this is hilarious. He goes on to say, let me get this right, that there's an increased rate, he said what he did note through all his years of working with people with stress, that there is an increased rate of heart attack if you feel there are too many demands on you. Whether there are or not, if you feel stressed, if you tell yourself, when we tell ourselves we're stressed, we have too much going on, then we are more likely to have heart attacks. And he said, and I quote, "If you perceive it, it's as good as if it were real." Here is a scientist. If you perceive it, it's as good as if it were real. Do you get that? It has nothing to do with what's going on in our lives. It's what we tell ourselves about it. And I know that one of the things that I have tended to do in my life, and this month helps me be more awake to it, say, "Oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Oh, I'm so overwhelmed." Factually, if I compare myself, and we know that's not a good thing, and I could look at the details and challenges that other people do or the things that other people take on, I don't have a lot when I think of single working mothers, working 2 jobs and this and that, And I tell myself, have told myself I'm overwhelmed, give me a break. But when I tell myself I am, then what happens? I feel burdened, I feel tired, I feel exhausted, I don't think clearly, I get crabby if somebody comes up with a legitimate request for my time and my energy, because I have talked myself into it. And the effect on my body and on my being is as real as if I had as many demands on me as that single mother working 2 jobs. And so this is what we do. This is what we do. And the truth is that we have the freedom to think new thoughts about it. And when that starts, if I don't keep telling myself I'm overwhelmed, if I go, "Oh, I can do this." Anybody know somebody whose typical response is, "Oh, I can do this. Oh, I can handle this." Do you notice that those people are not walking around like this? It's impossible. When you walk around saying, "I can do this. This looks challenging and interesting." That curiosity thing I bring up from time to time. "I don't know how, but I could do this." That our whole being changes. We are sending new messages to our body, our neurons, and all those wonderful chemical things that happen to our body. And not only that, but we're more open to some ideas coming in to help us deal with whatever is showing up. So we have at our disposal in every moment the freedom to catch a train of thought that is heading us into overwhelm, into stress, into despair, to catch it and shift it. It's like I read this metaphor recently and I really loved it. So I don't take credit for it. And if I know this person, they may not have made it up either. It doesn't matter. It's God made it up. Our lives are like an Etch-a-Sketch. How cool is anybody not know what an Etch-a-Sketch is? Yvonne, you know what an Etch-a-Sketch is? Okay. It's this red box that has dials on it, and then it has some kind of powder in it, so when you turn dials, it makes a picture. So you literally etch a sketching by turning the dials. So the metaphor is so great. That slate, that red thing that is the Etch-a-Sketch, is blank, but it is infinite possibility, which is the truth of our life. Infinite possibility, which is God. The field of all possibilities, Deepak Chopra calls God. The dials are our creative ideas, our impulses. So we have thoughts for what we want to create. Then we start the dial, and then that magic thing, we could call it a stylus, that starts drawing, is where we focus. Where we focus those creative impulses, where we focus our thinking. And then with the powder and stuff, the magic stuff that's in the Etch-a-Sketch, which is like what's the stuff of the world, we begin to create pictures. So we create our lives by our creative impulses and by where we focus our thinking. With the Etch-a-Sketch, what happens if you don't like what you drew? Exactly. Guess what? It's the same with your life. If you don't like what you see and experience in your life, I'm not saying jump on a trampoline, it'll all go away, but what you literally do is start shaking up your thinking. Start looking, what have I been thinking? What have I been using as my focal point? Limitation? Lack? Contingency on the past? Have I been deciding what my future can be based on my past? All those kinds of things. And if I have, then I need to shake up my thinking. And there's several great ways to shake up that thinking. All our spiritual practices allow us to do that. If we meditate, if we get still and listen, if we do affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment that helps us declare, and in that connecting with spirit to remember who we are. And when we have a hard time doing that, if we know there's a big shake-up needed, then that's when we go to a practitioner. And let me tell you, not for 5 minutes after service. Because that's the little Band-Aid that'll get you through the next day. But when we really start waking up to the fact that our lives could be more, not more by the world standards, I'm not talking about getting that Maserati or the thinner thighs necessarily. I'm talking about that experience of freedom, of full free life. When we realize it's going to take some shaking up to do that, then that's when we call a practitioner and start having a session or 2 or 3 to really start examining what thoughts have been making this drawing that is my life that I don't like. And then the practitioner, as Jack said, helps us go to the spiritual truth that we are unlimited. And then we borrow from our practitioner their knowing, because knowing is contagious. Basis of our teaching is there is only one. There is one mind, one life, one presence. That is God. We are all points of light, thank you, George Bush, in that presence. And so something that is known by one can be known everywhere. So the practitioner begins to remind us and wake us up to the spiritual truth that pertains to our lives. And then we can start getting on that thought train and start focusing our thoughts in ways that will create the drawings, that will create the life we love. But the first part is to start becoming awake. Am I thinking limiting thoughts? How am I thinking about my life right now? Am I telling myself, well, my life would be great if it weren't for these pains I'm starting to feel when I get up in the morning? If it weren't for my age, if it weren't for my relationship or my lack of relationship, or if it weren't for the job I have, or if it weren't for the fact that I didn't get into the college I wanted to get into. Or are we thinking about, gee, this thing's going on, I don't love it, but what I'm remembering is the power and presence of God is right here, and I'm going to put my attention, I'm going to put that stylus, that focus on what I want to express. Ernest Holmes said, our founder says, we must use our thought as a ladder to get us to our newfound freedom. Our thoughts are like ladders, and they go up or they go down. And as I was putting together this talk, I realized, and that's why I started talking about express, and you know I do that a lot. We're expressions of God. That's the way I like to refer to us. We're not children of God, because that allows us to sort of be dependent. We are expressions of God. And that the divine urge within us, also as Ernest Holmes said, is always pushing on us for greater expression. And you see, there is nothing in the world that can keep us from our greatest expression. And so that ultimately is the most freeing thought as we start asking, what is it that I want to express? That is what is always pressing on us. Whenever there's discomfort, especially divine discomfort, it's because we're not expressing the truth of who we are. Now, I don't mean going and telling somebody off, although we may need to say to somebody, you know what, you crossed a boundary, and I'm not going to have you do that anymore. I'm not permitting that anymore. But the biggest lie or going to sleepness is that we make up that some of the physical things that seem to limit us are keeping us from our expression. And they are not. They are distractions that keep us from really looking at what that expression is. Each of you has what is yours uniquely and wonderfully to express. And it can look a bunch of different ways. We'd have to sit on Kiki to keep her from singing and writing, but also within that, and you all know this, that she is here to love and lift the world. If she could, before she starts a song, her presence lifts us. Can you feel that when Kiki's here? Her presence is there to love and lift us. That is her expression. It's showing up as music. It's showing up in the concert she puts together. It's showing up when she does the water aerobics classes and when she's with little kids. That is her expression. Her education or lack, her finances or lack, gigs or lack, or whatever the people around her or lack cannot keep her from that expression, because that is who she is. And we can spend all day, all week, all month telling people why we can't be free or do this or that because of something going on in our lives, when we've put our attention on the wrong thing. Not what's in the way of my freedom, but what do I want freedom to do and be? So that's a question I would love you to be focusing on this month. If you notice that you start saying, oh yeah, I can't do this, or I can't go here, or I can't have this because of X circumstance, and it isn't that circumstances aren't real on the three-dimensional level, but that focus is going to create a picture of more lack and more limitation. We need to move our focus on the, okay, great, that's doing whatever it's doing in my life, but what do I really want to express? Because whatever it is something that the world cannot limit you in. The love that you are, the creativity that you are, the intelligence that you are, the wisdom that you are, the fun, the joy that you are, whatever it is for you, the world cannot keep you from expressing it. And that's our job, to keep our eye on the prize, which is that divine expression that is us. That is the freedom that we have, the freedom that we are. And as I said, you know, if that world lull, that world whispering or sometimes yelling keeps being in your head and saying, no, you can't do this, you can't be that, you're not that, that's when you go to a practitioner. Because we know the truth of who you are. We know that spirit is who you are. And if spirit put a song in you, whatever song is in you, and I use that as a metaphor, whatever song is in you, it was put there by spirit, And Spirit means you to sing that song, to express that song. And Spirit will assist you. But we have to be open. We have to cooperate with it. We have to think the thoughts and make the connections with that divine. To have that expression unfold. Little tip. Something else, I love going through any Ernest Holmes books because I'll always find some great tip. What we contemplate, this isn't the tip. Well, this is part of the tip. What we contemplate, we become. You know, I said this in other ways. What we dwell on, whether it's freedom or limitation, we become, we experience. And the easiest, quickest way for us to move into that sense of freedom is to start contemplating Spirit, start contemplating God. That is why in our form of affirmative prayer, we start with putting our attention on what God is. Because as soon as we move our attention away from whatever our circumstances are and start putting our attention on God, we are immediately lifted to that place of freedom. The consciousness of God is freedom. So when I put my mind, my attention on that infinite, I start rising to that freedom. That is just the way it is. So again, what I suggest this week is that you stay, this month, in fact, that you stay awake to those thoughts of limitation. Say, am I thinking freeing thoughts or am I thinking limiting thoughts? And if you're thinking limiting thoughts, start putting your attention on the infinite. Start putting your attention on what it is that you desire to express. And I'm going to close with some things I put together, some meditations from Ernest Holmes. So I would love to invite you to close your eyes so you can take this in. And as Jack did, I'm going to use the I, and I invite you to step into that I with me. Knowing that God is all there is, and that God is unlimited freedom. That I am that unlimited freedom, then I know this. I cannot be tied nor bound, for I am free spirit, and the power of my life is from on high. I shall never again tell myself that I am poor, sick, weak, unhappy, limited, uneducated, not enough. I shall never tell myself that again. I shall daily speak the truth to my inner soul, telling it that it is wonderful, that it is marvelous, that it is absolutely unlimited, that it is one with the great cause of all life. It is one with truth, power, and action. I will whisper these things into my soul. I will proclaim these into my soul until my soul breaks forth into songs of joy with the realization of its limitless possibilities. I will climb that ladder of thoughts of God until I break forth into the knowing that I am that. I am the glorious, full, free life of God. And whatever song is in me to sing, I have the freedom to sing it. And I sing it. And I sing it. And I surround myself with people who encourage me in my song, and I encourage them in their song, and together we create that nucleus of consciousness, that choir of full, free living that is the kingdom of heaven that is our promise for our life. And I know that this is not available to some. It is available to all in every moment. And so I open, I receive, I allow, and I rejoice. I am so grateful for this knowing of the truth of my freedom. And I release this word into a law that only says yes, and whose job it is to mold my life according to this thought. Again, I give thanks, and so it is.